Hey, I'm back. So 2 weeks ago, I had a little bit of an experience. Let me tell you about it. So for most of the summer, because I'm working in a summer camp, the camp's running, it's full. I got to stay elsewhere. Usually, I stay here. At least I did in the past. However, my car, the CV axle is failing. I got a few other problems I got to address. So I decided, there's a campground, like 5 minutes up the road. So instead of driving home, it takes about 40 minutes to get here. It's 60 miles every day. I was like, I think I'll just stay at this campground that's right up the road. So I've been camping, or I was camping there, I should say. And it was going pretty well. I enjoy camping. It was fun. It's next to a big lake. I did some fishing. It was pretty cool. But we had a week about 2 weeks ago. I want to say it was pretty long for a heat wave up here in terms of how hot it was. It was in the mid to upper 90s for 4 days. Now, if you're from the South, if you're in, just like a temperate climate, you're like, that's fucking nothing. Who cares? You have to understand, people here are not used to that. I live in the border of the boreal forest. It still gets down to like 50 or 40 degrees at night here in the summer. That's the way it is. That's what people are used to. So when it's 90 degrees, mid to upper 90s, like I said, back in the day, I remember you could count on one hand how many 90-degree days you saw up here in total. Prior to, I want to say about last year, I saw 3. And, it wasn't too bad because it was hot during the day, but it would still get down to, upper 60s, lower 70s at night. So you'd be fine. And that's still pretty hot. But, we had a night here where the nighttime temperature was 80, which is absolutely absurd. It should never be that hot in northern Wisconsin. But we're not going to talk about that. My job is relatively physically demanding, and I'm outside all day, which is beautiful. I love being outside. That's why I do what I do. However, when it's very hot and you forget to drink water and you have a little bit of the alcohol in you, you get dehydrated. And when it's that hot, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time you notice, it's too late. You can't drink water because you're going to just throw it up. Your body's just, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a chemist. I don't know any of these things. I'm not a biologist. But basically, you get to a point where your body can't ingest food or water, and you're basically boned, and it's just a downhill spiral from there. That happened to me, I think 2 Sundays ago. It might have been 3. By about 4 p.m., I started having, my head was spinning. I couldn't really concentrate. I lost my appetite. I lost my thirst, even though I knew I was very thirsty. And I was like, well, because I've had this happen before, not quite as severe as this one, but I've had it happen before. So I was like, well, here we go. I'm curious to see what happens. So I ended up leaving work that day, went to my campsite, sat down. I couldn't gather my thoughts. I was just, like I said, I was spiraling, getting worse and worse and worse. And my thoughts became less and less coherent. My perception of time got really strange. And I was trying to drink water, but I kept throwing up. I couldn't eat food because I would also throw that up. And what happened was I came down with heat stroke because it was super hot that day. And I wasn't drinking enough water. I was very dehydrated, had some alcohol in me. Never have alcohol in you when it's hot. Don't do it. Do not do it. If there's anything you learned from the story, it's tempting. If you're doing work outside and it's really hot, do not drink alcohol. It will fucking ruin your day. Believe me. Anyways, so that night, it's just everything kept getting worse. I kept vomiting. I was trying to drink water, but eventually I started feeling ill, like holding the bottle to my throat, trying to drink the water. And I had to stop. I don't know. I was at that point probably, I'm joking, but like 70% water, maybe 50, 40, 30, maybe. I had a drop of water in my body, and I was going through the ringer. By this point, the sun had set. I was laying down. I'd been laying down for a bit. I was just staring up, and eventually everything started spinning. And because my tent was, it's got a big open dome. It's got a rainfly you can put on it, but it's got a big mesh net that's on top of it. So when you're laying down, you can look up at the stars, which is actually very beautiful. I think that's a very interesting, cool design. Probably standard, I don't know. And the stars were all spinning. I could barely fucking think or function. I kept vomiting. At this point, I was vomiting just on myself. And I was scared. You know, I wasn't sure. I didn't think I was going to get through it. You know, I was in the middle of nowhere at this campsite where there's nobody. It was the middle of the week. Well, no, it was a weekend. I work weekends, obviously, but nobody was there. It wasn't. It was not a busy time. It wasn't a busy time at that time for that, and it's a very private campground. Not a lot of people go there, which is part of why I like it. But I was sitting in that bed, staring up at the stars. They were all spinning. And, you know, I truly felt like I had no control. You know, I was totally at the whim of whatever the hell was about to happen. And it was about that point, and I don't know if I did this, you know, out loud or if it was in my head, because my perception was so fogged that, frankly, I have no idea. But I was dead set on thinking I was going to die. So I began running through in my mind grave sins I've committed in my life. And whether I was speaking them, thinking them, I have no idea. It might have been both. I was saying them out loud. I was praying to God, begging for absolution, because I thought that was it. And, you know, while I was going through it, it scared me at first, but I felt a sense of ease as I continued thinking. You know, I was ready to confront death. I was prepared for it. I was ready to die in that moment. And I felt a sense of finality and peace, which is a very rare thing for me. You know, I'm always constantly confused. I'm always constantly wondering. I'm always doubting myself. But despite the tremors, despite the convulsions, despite the vomiting, despite the insanity of the situation, I was ready to die. You know, I've been very depressed for, I want to say, about a year now, maybe a little longer. I really have no idea. But, you know, I've really been wondering, you know, nothing in life seemed to give me joy. And everything that I, at least as I perceived it, everything that I came here to do was totally pointless, fruitless. And I felt like I was totally wasting my time. And I was seriously wondering if I had anything left to see or do in this life, in the world. And I was beginning to think, no. I was genuinely beginning to think that that was it. You know, the best of my life had passed. Everything was just going to continue getting worse. And it just felt like a chore. Every day felt like a chore. Getting up, doing things for meaningless reasons, going to bed, not having any conviction about anything that I did. And I was genuinely wondering why God was keeping me alive. I was wondering, is this like some kind of joke? Like, what's the fucking problem here? Anyhow, so that was the frame of mind that I've been in and was in at that point. And I was ready for the next life. I genuinely did not see anything worth living for at that point. And the thought of death comforted me. And that brought a peace, which was strange. You know, I continued praying. I continued either reciting or thinking my sins. I don't know. I don't know which. Like I said, my perception was so fucked at that time. Everything was spinning. The fact that I was even capable of thought was kind of insane. But eventually, I felt a deep sleep come over me. And I genuinely thought that would be the last time that I would be alive. And I was ready. I was ready to go. I wasn't even scared. I was excited. I don't know if I'd say excited. I was at peace. I was ready to die. But I woke up the next day. And I felt like fucking shit. Because I had half a drop of water in my body. Every single muscle in my body was cramped because I was severely dehydrated. My head felt like a fucking drum. Like if someone was just pounding and slamming on it like a gong. I felt like I was the Chinese special. I was the Chinese special. They were slamming my head like a gong. It was ridiculous. And I went into work that day. I packed up my stuff because that was the day I had to leave. It was Monday, which is the day that I stopped staying at the campground. So I packed all my stuff up very slowly because I felt like death. And it's, you know, that I don't want you to think like I was like I was relieved that I woke up or like I had some kind of like immediate epiphany. I didn't. I felt like shit. I was like, dude, why didn't I just fucking die in my sleep? What the fuck, man? And I packed everything up. It took really long because I was totally fucked. And bending over, my head felt like it was about to spill onto the ground. Terrible. I kept trying to drink water, but I would either shit it out immediately or would vomit, and it felt horrible. I went to work, tried working, did that for about 30 minutes, and I was like, I ain't doing this. I'm fucking boned. So what I did was, my sister was in town, and as it turns out, my cousin Nico, who I haven't seen for a long time, was also in town. And my folks were asking me to come down to Oconomowoc and see everybody. Well, it was going to be super hot for several days. I was in op, basically. Like, I couldn't do anything. I drove over to Eagle River, and I rented a car with air conditioning because I needed it. I have one vehicle with working air conditioning. It gets the worst gas mileage, of course, so I barely ever use it, which is awesome. And I drove down to my folks' place. It was a long drive. I felt terrible. I had to stop a lot because I was ill, very ill. That was a long car ride. It was probably 6 hours. Usually it takes about 4.5. When you were in the state I was in, it takes 6, which is awesome because I literally could not think of anything other than just not being in that fucking car and being there. And I've been in a habit because of my hubris, which is something I've been thinking about because I am one that becomes frustrated with people that are very vainglorious, prideful, and to confront that about yourself is very difficult, especially when it's one of the traits that you hate the most in other people. Because of my pride, I often do not let people help me. When things are difficult for me, I kind of like cloister myself off, separate myself. I'm hearing some weird noises in this pond. Sorry, I keep looking over here. Something's happening over here. Some kind of like Cthulhu is about to come out here and fucking kill me, probably. I don't know. But I realized how helpless I was at that point. I realized that, I could tough it out. I could just fucking stay here and try to work it out. And it would have been extremely difficult. I don't really have access to air conditioning. I was extremely ill. I don't have running water or electricity at my cabin. We have electricity at Gabe's house, but I'd have to be, put up. And it would have been a whole thing. There were other things too. I could have stayed at like a hotel or something. I don't know. There were other options. But basically, I thought to myself, I need somebody. I need help. I need help. So I went down there and I did that, stayed with them. They cared for me. I got to see my sister, got to see my cousin Nico. I was in a lot of pain and was absolutely miserable. But I tried my best, and they were all happy to see me. And that was very nice. That, in combination with getting over the illness over the span of about 4 days, I felt a very intense euphoria once it departed. Once I was feeling even like semi-normal again, where I was actually, capable of doing anything other than sitting down and just staring at a wall. It made me feel fantastic. It made me feel good that I reached out to somebody else, my family in this case, to help me out when I was, dire straight up. Because I always feel very isolated. I always feel very alone. It's a frustrating thing because I do that to myself for a very, big complex list of reasons I don't really want to talk about. But I don't know how else to be. I am the consequence of everything that's happened in my life. Some good, some bad. But that aspect, being very solitary and not being able to reach out to people for help, has always been it's been a sticking point in my personality for my entire life. My entire past puberty life, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Being as I am roughly now, since I was a teenager until now, I always viewed it as a point of weakness. I don't want to talk about why. It's not really important, but going down there and doing that and healing kind of flipped everything on its head. It was on my way back when I was thinking about everything that had happened that it feels like something like a switch was finally flipped in my brain. Like a veil was lifted and I could actually see things for as they were. I live a very charmed life in reality. I struggle a lot with perception. I am constantly fighting against myself and poor habits that I have. Not just the alcohol, there's other stuff. But, it's tough. When you're a fucking basket case like me, it's tough out there. But the fact that I've been able to do what I've done, despite everything, and the people I have in my life on the daily basis, the folks here, the folks at church, even the folks at work, even though I don't, I'm going to leave it there. It is truly a blessing because a man like myself really deserves to be fucking in a gutter with no hope and totally fucked. But I was spared from that. And not just spared, but the beauty of everything that I have done and seen finally came back to me on that drive home and then eventually being here. Everything kind of made sense, fell back into place. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm, magically cured, but sometimes the strangest things, like almost dying of heat stroke in a tent in the middle of nowhere when you're totally down and hopeless, sometimes it can help you. Sometimes it can flip your perspective upside down. It's made me think a lot about everything, about my faith, about my life, about the way that I conduct myself. For example, I come back here every day now instead of staying at that campground. I still have to fix the CV axle. My car is this close to catastrophic failure, but we're working it out. It's going to get done. I'm not worried about it. I think above all, the thing that I think about a lot is how easy it is, because of the way the world is, the way the people are, and just everything. It's so easy to dismiss blessings that are right in front of your face because you see them every day. You don't realize it until you're eventually forced out of your perspective through whatever situation and you're put back in. And that can really make you understand things. That can really make you see the forest for the trees. It can make you understand what you have, what your purpose is. It can give you purpose again. This isn't really new information. This isn't really surprising to me because my entire motto coming here was that suffering does cause a man to be great. It causes a man to understand his place, the world. But there is a greater balance to these things that I'm realizing. You know, it's so easy, especially when you got this dumb fucking brain like me, to focus on one thing. Life is a gigantic fucking melting pot of shit, and you always have to think about everything, how it's going to affect it. You focus on one thing too much, something gets neglected. Eventually it comes to bear. I know all of this, and it's frustrating to me that even at 30 years old, I still have to continue learning the same lessons over and over again. But I am thankful above all that I no longer feel that my life has no meaning. I no longer feel like I'm just waiting to die. I understand now what I must do. I understand what I have, and I understand. I'm not going to say I understand my place or the world or life, because I don't, but a shred of it, enough to at least ground me in a way where I can continue with hope doing the things that I do, has been afforded to me through that. And frankly, I couldn't have asked for anything else, anything better. When you're straight up, when you don't know what you're doing, you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. A man that's sleeping, and he's really sleeping, sometimes you got to shake that motherfucker, get him really awake. Sometimes you got to almost die to understand life. That's the message. If you're fucked up and depressed, maybe almost die. Maybe you'll figure it out. I'm going to leave it there. Have a good day.